Hello, this is Michael. Welcome back to the Learning to Program using the Godot game engine. In this video, we're going to cover the Hello World project. So this is the simplest project, and most people, when they are learning a new programming language, they like to make this project. So we're going to make one here in Godot. So I'm going to make a new project by clicking the New Project button. I'm going to go to my project path where I'm going to work, which is C:dev Godot projects. I'm going to select that folder and I'm going to call it Hello World. I'm going to hit the Create Folder button, and that will set my project path. I'm going to hit Create and Edit. Alright, so the goal of my game is I'm going to make a 2D game, and I'm going to have a window, and in that window I'd like to print the words Hello World, and then with code I would like to change it to say Hello Michael. Alright, so first I'm going to switch to a 2D scene, and here you'll notice that I've got some this kind of blue outline window or rectangle right here. What this represents is the viewport of my game, and the viewport you can kind of think of as like a window in your house. So if I'm inside my house and I'm looking through the window, I can see a scene that may be much larger, but I can only see that little that little window. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep all my drawing inside of this viewport for now. Later we'll look at being able to move that around and some other things. Being able to change the size and shape of that viewport, but for now we're going to leave that alone. So what I'd like to do is create a window, or a little what's called a panel. But to do that, I first need a root node to my scene. So all scenes are shared between objects in the game, but also levels. And in this case, I'm going to use this scene as a level. So I need to create a base node, and I can create just a regular old node, and I'm going to rename it to main, because, or actually I can call it Hello World, just like that. So when I save this scene, it's going to use the root node as the default name, and I could change this to something else, but it's handy when you keep it the same. So I'm going to go ahead and save that scene. So now you see my scene over here in my file system. It's called helloworld.tscn, and so that stands for my scene. And so I can, if I want to reload that scene, if I say close it, all I have to do is double click on that Hello World, and now my scene's back open again. So then I'm going to add that panel that we talked about. So in order to add a node to your another node, you need to select that node and click the plus button, or select that node and right click and then add a child node. And it's very specific which node that you're wanting to add to, and we'll look at that in just a minute why that matters so much. So I'm going to find a panel, and these are under these green circles, controls, and I can scroll down through here and find what I'm looking for, and I want to pick a panel. You can also search for them, so if I didn't know where it was, I could just search for panel, just like that, and it'll find it nice and quickly for me. So I created a panel, and you notice it appears up here at the top, and it's really small. It doesn't even cover a fraction of my, or a very small fraction of my window. So I can drag it around using my mouse button, clicking on it, holding and left mouse button and dragging, so I can move it wherever I'd like. And then I can resize it by clicking on these little handles, these orange dots, and dragging, and I can resize it and make it larger, just like that. So now it's roughly in the center of my viewport here. So when I run my game, the first time you run, it'll say no main scene is selected. So this is kind of like the start of your game. So if you had a splash screen, you may want to select your splash screen. If you just want to go straight into your main menu, you may want to do that. But in this case, I want to jump straight to this hello world scene. So there it is. Now you can see, here's my game running. Here's my viewport boundaries right there. And right there is my panel that I created. Now, inside that panel, I want to display hello world. So to do that, I'm going to use another control called a label. I'm going to right click, and here I'm right clicking on my panel and saying add child node, and I'm going to add a label. And a label is just a way to display some text in Godot. Again, it appears at the top left and is very small, so I'm going to drag it right about to the center. And then over here, this is the first time we're using the property window, or the property inspector. And I'm going to click over here on the right hand side. There's a little bit of color differentiation there, but it's hard to see. But I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to type hello world, just like that. And so you notice there's my text, I can see it, and it's still a little small. So there's a couple ways we can boost that up. You can change the font right here, custom font. You could change the font, but that takes a little bit more effort. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to use the rectangle, and I'm going to change the scale, which means the size. And so I'm going to go up to a nice big 3 by 3. So that'll multiply the X and Y. So the X is your left to right, and Y is the top to bottom. And so it'll multiply that by 3 times both. So here, let me experiment. I'm going to only change the Y by 1. So you notice here it got wider because my X scale is 3, but it didn't get taller. And I can do vice versa. I can do 1 for my X and 3 for my Y. So now it's taller, but it's not as wide. I'm going to do 3 by 3. And now I have nice big text right there. Alright, so now I can run my game, and I've got a panel, and I'm displaying hello world. I'm almost there. I just want to do one more thing. I want to change that when I run it using code to say hello Michael. So to do that, we're going to add a script, and that's very easy. It's much like adding a subnode, but what we do instead is we click this little scroll button with the green plus sign up here, or you can right click and say attach script. And each node can have one script attached to it, and only one script. And so in this case, it usually makes sense to have a script on your root node, but you could also have something like a player, and the player might have a script on him that describes or controls how he moves around the level. So, but in this case, I'm just going to put it here on the root node. And so I'm going to click the plus sign. And here I get the attach node modal window. And this has lots of options. And so the language, I'll walk through them real quick with you. The language allows you to pick which language you're using. And we're going to stick with the default, which is GDScript. The inherits is the node type that we're attaching the script to. So in this case, this was just a regular old node. And so the inherits is going to be regular old node. The class name is, we can't change that in this case. The template, so the default will have some information in it. We'll see that in a minute. But you could select here to have the empty, and so I would get an empty script instead of this default script that'll have a little bit of helpful starter code in it. There's a built-in script, and what that means is it will put the code that I write directly into the node, which is inside of the scene file. So all that means is I won't have a separate code file that I can work with. It'll be stored inside the scene. And sometimes later on down the road you may find that useful, but in this case we're going to leave that built-in script off. And so therefore it has this, which is this path property right here, and that's where our file will be created. So by default it keeps the name the same as the node and adds this GD, which is the extension for Godot scripts. So I'm going to leave that all the defaults here, and I'm going to hit create. And so you notice what happened over here. I got a new script file, and I can jump between, I can jump to that script by double clicking it here. I can also select my script tab up here and pick my Hello World project here, or Hello World script file there. And I can also, over here on my node, I can click the little script icon right there next to it, and that'll also go there. So if I was here in my designer and I was working and I wanted to go to that code, all I'd have to do is click that script file or script icon, and I would jump to that script file. Alright, so now we're going to look at our code file. And what we wanted to do is change this text from saying hello world to saying hello Michael. So in order to do that, what we need to do is go into this ready function, and we'll talk more about functions later, but this function, all the code underneath here will be run one time when the scene starts, just like this comment says. So any line starting with this hashtag turns gray and will not be run. It's just for the programmers. So this won't have any impact on my program. This line will not have any impact on my program, but allows me to put comments into my code. So here I'm going to use a function called print, and what this will do is it will print a message to my output window down here. So I'm going to say hello world, and I'm going to save that by hitting Control S or going up to scene and saying save scene, and then I'm going to play, and you'll notice down here it says hello world. I could also say ready and hit play. So what we've done here is we've proven that this function runs once when the game starts. So now that I've done that, I'd like to access my label and set the text to say hello Michael. In order to access nodes, we can use a function called getNode _node, and then you give it the path. And so in this case it's panel label. So my script is running right here on hello world, and I want to access the panel, and then underneath that I want to access the label. And so I'll have the panel and then the label. So I'll pick that one. So now this would return my node, and then on the label I have a property called text. So what I want to do is I want to access the text property, so I use the period and then text, and then I can assign it something using this equal sign, and then I'm going to assign it hello Michael. And don't worry too much about all this syntax. We'll look at this in more depth later, but we're just looking at how to do a really simple operation one time to our scene. So now I'm going to go back to my scene, and I see it still says hello world, but when I run this, it now says hello Michael. And the reason that is because in the code we access the node, and then we access the text property of the node, and we assigned it a new value which was hello Michael. Alright, that's it.